Hey guys, tonight we're stepping into the chilled mist of medieval Japan, just before the sky blushes with dawn. You're not just watching history tonight, you're walking through it. You trudge slowly wrapped in hemp-woven robes, stiffened by cold dew toward the muted clatter of a makeshift kitchen on the edge of a samurai encampment. Around you, the air carries a ghost of firewood smoke, mingled with something earthy and sweet. It's barley and rice cooking your breakfast if you're lucky. There's no ambient soundtrack here, except the rhythmic croak of frogs and the slow hiss of steam from a cracked iron pot. You sit cross-legged on a straw mat, spine upright, like you're in zazen, but really, you're just hungry. That's when a low-ranking ashigaru, one of the foot soldiers, shuffles over, with a ladle made from a gourd. You watch bleary-eyed as he pours steaming liquid over a cracked bowl filled with grains. It's breakfast time, so before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And drop a comment with your location and local time. I love seeing where and when you all tune in. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're crouched in a muddy field outside what looks like a broken-down tea house, except it's really a cooking post for the morning meal. You hear the faint rattle of bamboo steamers being opened. That smell, it's nutty with a slight sourness, like toasted oats meeting miso paste. What's on the menu this fine pre-battle morning? Brown rice, a mix of barley, maybe a fortune's kind, a few roasted chestnuts, stirred in for warmth and calories. This isn't fluffy sushi rice, by the way. It's chewy, fibrous, and slightly coarse. Your teeth work harder, but it fills the stomach and keeps well over long marches. Soldiers in feudal Japan didn't dine on delicacy. They ate what endured travel and didn't rot in the rain. And rice, especially when hardened into cakes or packed into bamboo, was king. The fires fueled not by wood but by dried brush pine needles and something a little unsettling, recycled straw sandals. Hey, nothing goes to waste, especially when silence is golden and wood smoke could get you an arrow in the back. Ashigaru share stories about a silent stew made in an earthen pit oven sealed with wet clay to hide smoke. But not today. Today you eat fast and loud because the enemy's miles off. You take a bite of rice mixed with barley called mugi gohan. It's slightly nutty and chewy in a way that feels honest. This combo wasn't just about nutrition, it was economics. Barley and millet stretched the more expensive rice and helped ease the tax burden for lower-ranked fighters. Even samurai, despite their armored swagger, didn't eat white rice regularly. That was reserved for high-ranking lords and ceremonial events. Out here, it's all about survival grains. Now and then you see a soldier pull a small, wrinkled object from his pouch and suck on it with reverence. No, it's not candy. It's umeboshi, a pickled plum, so sour and salty it could strip paint. But it keeps you alert, kills bacteria, and masks the taste of stale rice. Plus, it gives your body the salts it loses on the march. Rumor has it some warriors believed it kept evil spirits at bay. More likely, it kept dysentery at bay, which in battlefield terms is the same thing. You slurp from a wooden bowl filled with soup that's half broth, half foraged mystery. You recognize seaweed, maybe a slice of daikon radish, and an earthy bitterness that could be burdock root. The broth is cloudy pale brown with hints of miso paste. It's simple, but in the cold, it feels like luxury. You hold the bowl with both hands, not out of etiquette, but because the heat soothes your frozen fingers. Beside you, a veteran warrior gnaws silently on a skewer of dried sardines. They're brittle, salty, and have that faintly fishy funk that tells you they've been around for a while. Perfect for long-term storage. He dips one into his soup to soften it, before chewing, years of pragmatism showing through. "Remember last winter," he mutters. All we had was dried daikon and chestnut husks, boiled in river water. You nod even though you weren't there. Memory exaggerates, but hunger doesn't. One young soldier pulls a wrapped packet from his travel sash. It's a bamboo leaf package tied with hemp cord. Inside, hardened rice balls pressed with a dash of sake lees, fermented rice mash. They last longer and have a boozy tang, which is oddly comforting. Another guy offers you a piece of roasted ginkgo nut. It's bitter, but filling. Historians still argue whether soldiers truly ate this variety of plants, or if we've backfilled those stories from monk cuisine records. Some say it's apocryphal, more aspirational than accurate. Others point to battlefield diaries that list wild yam bamboo shoots, and even frog legs. It depends on the army, the region, and whether your side was winning. You take one more spoonful, feeling the slight grit of sand at the bottom of your bowl. Probably from unwashed roots. Probably won't kill you, you hope. And just as you begin to feel that odd warmth that comes from full bellies and false safety, a scout rushes in from the tree line. No yelling, just a stiff nod. Everyone moves in quiet efficiency. Bowstrings are tightened, armor straps fastened, rice bowls abandoned half-eaten. One guy buries his with a prayer to avoid bad luck. You rise, brush off the bits of barley stuck to your sleeve, and adjust the ties on your kabuto. Your head still smells faintly of miso and smoke, but now the only thing rising in the sky is the sun. You walk in a slow line through the damp grass, the mist now thinning into streaks of gold as the sun lifts lazily above the distant ridges. Around you, the rhythm of armor creaking and footsteps crunching through dew-wet leaves sets the tempo of the morning. Your belly, warmed by barley and miso, growls, quietly annoyed that digestion must now share space with nerves. But before the clashing of blades, before orders echo across the hills, there's a ritual even war cannot interrupt the second round of breakfast. You pass another squad crouched near a fireless pit, their hands working fast and almost reverently. It's barley again this time, roasted over low embers the night before. The grains are dark, nearly black, and when you take a pinch from a generous stranger and chew, it crackles like dry leaves. It's smoky, bitter, and oddly satisfying. It gives your mouth something to do, and in this moment, that's comfort. There's a saying in the village, millet builds your legs, rice builds your pride. Out here, you'd trade pride for endurance any day. You glance over and see a comrade rubbing something onto a rice ball with a finger. Salt, he says, catching your eye. From my cousin in Iyo. He offers the rock-hard block like it's gold, which back then it practically was. You scrape a grain off with the tip of your knife and lick it. It stings your tongue and reminds you of the sea, even this far inland. Soldiers carried salt not just to flavor food, but to preserve meat, prevent cramps, and clean wounds. It was culinary and medicinal, and sometimes the cause of very petty wars. Someone offers you a bite of something oddly sweet. It's boiled chestnut mashed and packed into a sticky paste wrapped in persimmon leaf. A little celebratory treat from last night's foraging. You savor it longer than necessary. This rare touch of sweetness reminds you that there's still a world beyond the battlefield. A world with harvests, festivals, and warm rice cakes. You don't have to share with 6 hungry men. The squad begins to stir again. You tuck the chestnut paste away, maybe for later, maybe for luck. As you start moving again, one of the older warriors launches into a story. He talks about the time he ate nothing but toasted rice husks and dried fern roots for 3 days. Kept me sharp, he insists, tapping his head. Hungry men don't daydream. You laugh, but quietly. He's not joking. This kind of battlefield lore is everywhere. Whether true or exaggerated, it becomes your mythos, your invisible armor. Some of these tales even show up in later literature, retold with embellishments like spicy radish stew being passed around a campfire as arrows fell like rain, which, let's be real, is likely poetic license. More often than not, it was cold rice, pickled daikon, and silent chewing in the dark. One particularly wiry soldier claims his uncle once made a barley-based gruel with powdered sardine bones. Keeps your joints strong, he claims, cracking his knuckles loudly. Tastes like boiled regret, though. He offers you a pouch to sniff. You recoil slightly. It smells like a mix of seaweed salt and old fish tank. Good for battle, he grins. Bad for making friends. Historians still argue whether this kind of concoction was widespread or just regionally specific. Some accounts mention soldiers in the north incorporating kelp or seaweed into their travel food, both for its nutrients and the ease of drying. Others argue that inland armies relied more on dried mushrooms and mountain herbs. You pull out your own dried root mix from your pouch, a little bit of burdock, some shiso leaf, and a few peppercorns. It's bitter but bracing. You chew slowly, letting the oils coat your tongue. The pepper gives a brief heat that reminds you you're still alive. Always a plus on mornings like this. Around midday, the column halts. Not for rest, but because a scout spotted a hawk circling oddly, a signal perhaps. While the officers confer, you and your fellow soldiers crouch in the brush and sneak in a quick bite. This time it's dried sweet potato strips, chewy, leathery, and slightly smoky from having been hung near a fire overnight. They're hard to bite, but they last forever and give you just enough sugar to keep going. The strips were sliced thin, sometimes dusted with rice bran, and dried in the sun over bamboo mats. You think about how much time and care went into prepping these rations, and how quickly they vanish down your throat. The labor of peasants becomes the fuel of fighters, and you, somewhere in between, chew and swallow and march. Someone sneaks you a piece of pickled garlic. It's sharp, pungent, and immediately makes you question your friendship. But it cuts through the fatigue like a blade. You chase it with a sip from your canteen, which contains barley tea, lukewarm, faintly bitter, but soothing in its own humble way. You think back to the kitchen quarters of your clan, where women and old men boiled barley for hours, strained it and let it cool before sealing it into gourds. One old lady swore it could stop stomach cramps and even prevent betrayal, though the latter seemed like a stretch. You sit back, close your eyes for a moment, and listen to the soft hum of insects. The stillness won't last. But for now, the world is just barley breath and boots. And maybe that's enough. Your boots sink gently into the loamy earth as the column picks up again, weaving through narrow paths carved by deer and thyme. The forest is thick with cedar and pine, and sunlight dapples the mossy ground in gold and green splotches. Your stomach is no longer full, just comforted, a subtle difference you notice now, that the adrenaline of movement begins to rise. You chew on another morsel of rice ball, this one laced with a surprise, a puckering, sour, salty umeboshi pickled plum in its center. You nearly wince. It's like licking battery acid wrapped in a whisper of fruit, but it does something odd to your senses. It wakes you up, sharpens your edges. Samurai weren't after flavor, they were after fortitude. These little plums are battlefield staples. Their intense salt content makes them natural preservatives and thirst enhancers. Think of them as the medieval Japanese version of energy gels, except without the branding or the sugar, and with about 5 times the acidity. Some say they shock the spirit awake. Others say they burn the demons from your belly. You say they're weirdly addictive. You glance around as others unwrap their own rice parcels. Some have dried anchovies folded inside. Others just a smear of miso or a few sesame seeds. The packaging, bamboo leaf knotted with twine, is half the appeal. It keeps the meal safe, portable, and slightly more dignified than just pulling handfuls of rice from a sack. This rudimentary precursor to the modern bento wasn't just about portioning. It was about preparation ritual and presentation, even if the audience was just your own exhausted face under a pine tree. The bamboo wrapping crinkles softly in your hand, and for a moment, the faint smell of smoke and vinegar triggers a memory your mother's kitchen, boiling pickles in old sake brine, muttering about balance, too much salt, and the gods turn their backs. You smile faintly, too late now. Across from you, a fellow soldier carefully unfolds his own meal and lays it out on a flat rock like a ceremony. A rectangle of dried tofu, still pale and stiff, rests beside a hunk of millet cake. There's a chunk of something brown, dried daikon perhaps, or maybe konnyaku jelly hardened and peppered with sesame. He eats slowly, methodically. You realize it's not because he's savoring it. It's because chewing this stuff takes real work. Historians still argue whether these field meals were prepared in bulk by kitchen staff or hand-packed by family. The truth? Probably both. Higher-ranked samurai likely had attendants or hired cooks. Lower ashigaru often relied on the women of their villages, or in leaner times themselves. There are stories of soldiers using rice bran as makeshift food, padding bulking out precious white rice with the husky outer layers, normally thrown to pigs. In times of famine, even those husks became a luxury. You feel a crunch underfoot and glance down. Acorns. You remember tales of starving soldiers boiling them 3 times to leach out the bitterness, then grinding them into cakes with foraged roots. One story you heard around the campfire claimed a dying samurai once asked for nothing but boiled acorn gruel. Another claimed he asked for a fried mochi stick and sake. Hard to say which version is true or which would taste worse. Still, as you rest beneath a small ridge, you pull out a pouch of your own wild mix, dried mushrooms, a few pine nuts, a strip of dried fish tied like a ribbon. It's like a medieval trail mix if you traded raisins for squid and granola for seaweed. You chew thoughtfully, your jaw already sore from the sheer effort. Somewhere nearby, a pot clinks. Someone is reheating miso soup on a makeshift stove, just a shallow bowl atop a few hot stones using leftover charcoal and twigs. The scent wafts over and you're reminded that even something as simple as soup requires strategy. No open flames, no crackling wood. It's a delicate dance of stealth and sustenance. You remember a monk once explaining how miso is more than flavor, it's medicine. Full of probiotics, fermented to last forever and able to mask the flavor of spoiled vegetables. It's the Swiss Army knife of samurai cuisine, or rather the katana of broths. Another soldier is sipping his from a hollowed-out gourd. He waves you over and offers you a swig. It's thin, barely more than warm, salty water, but it warms you from the inside. You hand it back with a nod and he tells you, "Deadpan, my mother makes it thicker." She says, "Real soup stands on its own legs." You smile. He's probably right. A commotion ahead interrupts your thoughts. The column pauses again, this time, near a flat clearing where scouts signal rest. Packs are dropped, armor loosened, and everyone instinctively reaches for food, not because they're hungry, but because this may be the only pause for hours. Now, as you sit with your legs stretched and boots off, you watch someone prepare what looks like roasted rice. The grains are darker than usual, cooked until nearly burnt and then cooled. This parched rice, called hoshi, lasts nearly forever and rehydrates in hot water. It crackles faintly in the pouch. Some soldiers grind it into powder and mix it with water to make a quick paste like an ancient protein shake minus the vanilla flavoring. Another curious preparation appears nearby, dried noodles probably made from buckwheat. They're brittle gray and barely recognizable, but someone's got a pot heating water nearby. There's no sauce, no toppings, just hot noodles to slurp between mouthfuls of air. Still, it's a welcome variation. You remember hearing that some daimyo's feudal lords insisted their troops carry small amounts of kombu, or dried seaweed. Not for flavor, for iodine, for stamina, for superstition. Whether science or strategy, it adds a briny umami boost to otherwise bland rice. The soldier next to you has something that looks suspiciously luxurious. A pressed rice block wrapped in nori. You raise a brow and he shrugs. My uncle's a merchant. I traded him a whetstone. Fair enough. The conversation turns briefly to rumors. Someone claims a warlord in the north eats nothing but beef stew and eggs before a battle. Another insists some units are fed eel rice for courage. The veteran smirks. I once ate cold tofu on a stick and still survived 7 battles. He pats his belly, which is not large but proud. You grin. There's one oddball sitting apart slowly eating a daikon slice, dipped in fermented soybean mash. He's chewing like a philosopher, eyes half closed. You ask him what it is. Natto, he says. Fermented beans. Smells like death. Heals like life. You've never seen a more accurate food review. As the break ends and boots are laced again, you feel something shifting, not just in the tension of the group, but in your own body. The food you've eaten, some hot, some cold, some strange, has settled into a core warmth that doesn't feel full but sufficient. Not indulgent, but enough. You stand brushing off a pine needle from your sleeve. Your stomach doesn't growl anymore, but it's not satisfied either, and that's okay. Out here, satisfaction is a luxury, but readiness that you've earned. You almost gag. Then it hits. That bolt of clarity, that slap of energy. No wonder monks drank this before long meditation sessions. No wonder warriors packed it before battle. It wasn't about taste, it was about keeping your eyes open and your thoughts straight. Samurai didn't have espresso, they had matcha. Back in the Heian era, tea was elite, reserved for nobles and ceremonies. By your time, it trickled into warrior culture, especially Zen-influenced houses where tea became both meditative and medicinal. On the march, it was less about ceremony and more about speed. Just enough time to scoop, stir, sip, and move. One grizzled samurai mutters, "Tea clears the fog." Whether he means the literal mist or the fog of fear, you can't tell. Doesn't matter, he's right. You pull out your last strip of dried tofu, thin, stiff like paper folded and looped in twine. You bite a piece off and chew slowly. It doesn't taste like much, but it's high in protein and light to carry. This is what samurai actually ate before battle. No sushi trays, no wagyu bento, just roots rice and resolve. And maybe, just maybe, that's why they endured. The slope flattens, but your legs don't thank you. They throb with every step, now pulsing from shin to hip like a silent drumbeat. The mist has given way to a clear, sharp morning, the kind that smells like cold iron and damp bark. You trudge alongside your unit in silence, eyes scanning the terrain, ears perked for rustle or rhythm. But your mind drifts somewhere softer, somewhere in the direction of lunch. Because the morning's rice ball is now just a ghost in your gut. And that sour plum didn't last past the second mile. Your fingers find their way to your side pouch again, habit more than hunger. But there's nothing but a stiff paper bundle tied with thin string. You pull it out carefully, untie it, and lay the contents across your palm. Samurai bento. Though it doesn't come with cute cartoons or plastic sauce bottles, this is a battlefield meal made for endurance, not Instagram. Diaries mention food parcels lovingly packed by wives or sisters, while supply logs show units receiving bulk shipments of dried rice, pickled vegetables, and fermented sauces. Some scholars suggest there was a tiered system. High-ranking samurai got crafted meals, lower ranks received bulk rations and made do with what they had. Either way, you realize these small wrapped bundles were as much about morale as they were about calories. The samurai bento wasn't a meal. It was a message. You are remembered. You chew slower now, savoring the bitter notes of radish, the crunch of cold rice, the faint brine from the seaweed melting on your tongue. Your fingers are sticky again. You wipe them on your sleeve, not caring. To your left, a group of soldiers share a flat rice cracker. It's hard, blistered from being pressed and roasted over a fire days ago, and tastes like a smoky version of parchment. Still, it breaks the monotony. Back to the present. Another soldier, clearly a veteran, unwraps a thick rice cake dyed purple with perilla leaf. It's dense, chewy, and herbal. A good traveling food doesn't spoil, doesn't freeze, doesn't attract insects. He tells you his wife made it. She said it protects the spirit, he murmurs. And the intestines. You laugh quietly. Both are equally important out here. Someone mentions sakura mochi cherry blossom rice cakes, wrapped in pickled leaves. Springtime, they say. When the war ended last year, we got them from the temple. You haven't seen one in months. You nod and pretend to remember. Even if you've never tasted it, the idea is enough. Memory can be delicious too. You hear the crunch of a pine cone underfoot. A soldier bends to pick up a young one, green and tightly closed. You can roast these, he offers. If you don't mind sap and bitter teeth, you laugh. Then someone else pulls out a candy. Actual sugar. Made from boiled millet syrup and hardened into amber chunks. The man next to you practically tackles him. Sugar was rare, imported, expensive, and wildly addictive. This little rock of sweetness is passed like a relic, sucked on until it's a whisper of itself. You get one lick, that's enough. A few soldiers talk about a new kind of food. Some Western monks brought bread. Tastes like bland rice cake, someone says, but it's soft. That's the miracle. No one's seen it in person, only in rumors. As the meal ends, you wrap your leftovers tightly. A few sesame seeds, a bite of dried fish, a crumbling strip of kombu. Enough for another hour. You tie it neatly and slip it back in your pouch. The unit begins to move again. You fall into step. You glance down at the crumbs in your palm and brush them off gently. Ants scurry to investigate. Even they know a good meal is rare. Your mouth is dry again, but your heart is calm. Not satisfied, but calm. Your eyes scan the undergrowth for green clues, plants that are edible, safe, and ideally won't taste like regret. First, you spot a cluster of warabi bracken ferns, still curled tightly like tiny fists. Young shoots, tender and full of starch. You snap off a few and tuck them into a side pouch. They'll need soaking or boiling to remove bitterness, but for now, they're precious. A veteran to your left points out zenmai, a different kind of fern, often mistaken for warabi. Boil it twice, he mutters, unless you want to dream about your intestines staging a rebellion. You nod, memorizing the difference in the leaf curl. Survival through taxonomy. Nearby, another soldier spots Yamanoimo wild mountain yam. He digs with a curved blade, revealing the gnarled, muddy root. When grated raw, it turns slimy, a texture that modern diners debate, but ancient warriors learned to appreciate. Mix it with a handful of rice, and you've got instant energy, and a meal that feels strangely alive in your mouth. Someone else plucks a handful of mitsuba, a fragrant herb with a bright celery-like taste. It's no main course, but added to boiled grains or mashed root, it brings balance. Flavor in the field is rare. Anything green is cause for gratitude. As your team spreads out, the forest floor becomes a buffet of tiny, twitchy miracles. Shiitake mushrooms peek out from the base of a fallen log fat and firm their brown caps mottled like aged leather. You cut a few with your knife, inhaling their rich, almost meaty scent. Dried, they last for weeks. Fresh, they turn soup into sustenance. You pass a shrub with pale pink berries, nandin poisonous. You keep walking. A few steps later, you find fuki, or butterbur, its broad leaves unmistakable, its stalks bitter, but edible when boiled. You remember an old saying, if it's too bitter, you're too soft. You step out of the woods and into a narrow valley sun, now directly overhead, casting sharp, flat shadows that slide over rocks and armor like lazy ghosts. The stillness here is deceptive, too quiet, as if the very air is holding its breath. But you're not worried about ambushes right now. You're focused on something far more immediate. The sharp, savory smell of smoke-dried fish curling through the air. At the far end of the valley, tucked beside a crumbling shrine and a half-fallen Torii gate, a few soldiers are preparing food in the oldest way, known to man over fire. Not a roaring blaze, of course. That would be tactical suicide. No, they've built small, low-smoking fires in pit ovens, shielded with damp branches and earth. From a distance, you'd think it was just a strange patch of steaming soil. Closer up, it's a delicatessen of desperation. Fish, small ones mostly, are skewered on thin bamboo sticks. Some still wriggling when caught, now stiff and glistening. "First time with roasted smelt?" he asks, grinning. You nod. "You'll get used to the bones," he says. Or you won't. Either way, you'll eat them. He's not wrong. The bones crunch under your molars like gravel, but they're thin, almost airy, and full of calcium, another battlefield bonus. You look around and see another soldier holding a larger fish, a gutted trout stuffed with wild herbs and thin slices of pickled ginger. It's been slow roasted over an ember pit wrapped in wet bamboo leaves to steam from the inside. The leaves are charred now, the aroma a perfume of citrus and brine. He peels it open reverently, revealing tender white meat that flakes at the touch of a chopstick. He eats silently, eyes closed. You don't blame him. Someone else unrolls a bundle tied with vine cord. Inside are tightly packed strips of himono half-dried fish, cured with salt and sun, then smoked. Some are as stiff as bark, others still pliable, cured just yesterday. He passes a piece to you. You take a bite and wince. It's tough, salty enough to dry your tongue, and leaves an aftertaste that could rival shoe leather. But it grows on you, and it'll keep for weeks in the bottom of a pouch. Historians note that fish preservation was a central feature of samurai logistics. Inland units relied on dried river fish, while coastal armies favored seaweed-wrapped ocean catches. Salted and sun-dried fish could be sliced, torn boiled, or eaten raw. Flavor came secondary to portability, though some accounts mention elaborate wrapping techniques using lacquered paper or birch bark to keep the fish fresh longer, not because they were fancy, because they were practical. In the corner of the camp, one soldier is threading dried anchovies onto a thin reed, alternating with slices of daikon. For later, he says, eat it with millet. You imagine the flavor sharp, oily, earthy, a strange combination, but one born from generations of necessity. Another has smoked his with sakura wood and claims it smells like spring. A third swears by fish rubbed with sancho pepper. Before drying clears the sinuses, he boasts, although he sneezes violently right after. As you sit around this smokeless, nearly invisible campfire surrounded by chewing soldiers, you realize this is the closest thing you've had to a family meal in days. No one speaks loudly, but they all share. A skewer passed here, a dried strip offered there. A silent language of hunger and camaraderie. A young recruit, barely 15, pulls out a hand-carved box from his pack. Inside are 2 tiny sardines, dried and polished to a glossy sheen. My mother dried them with shiso and vinegar, he says, almost shyly. Said they'd keep me brave. He eats one and closes the box again. The second clearly is for another day, or another moment of fear. You remember stories about fish feasts after battle, huge tables laid with roasted carp, sea bream, and grilled eel. Maybe that happens, for the highborn, for victors, But out here on the forest's edge with blood on the horizon, the meal is simple fish. Dried on spear tips, shared in silence and devoured with gratitude. Someone jokes, "One more bite and I'll grow gills." Another adds, "Better than starving." Another quieter voice says, "Tastes better than victory." No one disagrees. You finish your skewer, slide the stick into the fire, and rise. Your stomach is content, not full, never full, but satisfied enough to walk another hour, draw another sword. You adjust your pack, tighten your sash, and follow the others back into the trees. The scent of smoke lingers on your fingers, in your hair, inside your memory. You carry it forward, along with the flavor of fish and fire. You walk with the taste of fire still clinging to your breath, and the smell of dried fish trailing behind like a forgotten scarf. The trail narrows once more as your group descends into a rocky corridor, a place where sunlight only reaches in scattered ribbons, and every footfall echoes off stone like a whispered drumbeat. You're not thinking about battle now. You're thinking about what comes next, what you'll eat when rations run dry, and silence is the only safety. Because there are days when even roasted fish isn't an option, when flames, however hidden, draw the wrong attention. Days like today when rumors float like spores that enemy scouts are within a morning's march. That's when food comes wrapped in secrets. You stop at a shaded outcrop where the officers pause to confer. Everyone squats or sits conserving strength. A few stretch their legs. And quietly, with the sort of reverence normally reserved for scrolls or prayers, soldiers begin to open food parcels wrapped in washy, thick, fibrous Japanese paper, usually used for letters, now repurposed for sustenance. You follow suit. The bundle you unwrap is tied with twisted rice straw, the kind found on grain sacks or harvested fields. The knots tight, done by someone with care, perhaps a mother or sister, who didn't trust the sturdiness of your hands. You tug gently. The paper unfolds with a whisper, revealing its precious cargo, pressed rice hardened into dense cubes, laced with a soft coating of sake leaves, that cloudy fermented residue left behind after rice wine is brewed. You bring it to your nose. There's a sweetness there, faint but unmistakable, and a tang that tickles the back of your throat, not rot. Fermentation, controlled, calculated, ancient. You break off a piece with your teeth. The scent hits you like a wave, nutty tart, slightly medicinal. He scoops it back up quickly, brushing off twigs. "Still good," he says. No one argues. Food wrapped in paper served another purpose too. It burned easily. When the time came to pack up and vanish, nothing was left behind. No metal tins, no ceramic bowls, just ash. The forest swallowed the rest. It was the edible equivalent of ghost tactics. One soldier shares a trick, soaking pressed rice in a little water from his canteen, letting it soften just enough to mash. He mixes it with powdered miso from a pouch sewn into his sleeve. In 10 minutes, it becomes a paste he eats with his finger. Tastes like desperation, he says, but smooth. You laugh. He's not wrong. Another man carries a smaller packet. When he opens it, the smell punches everyone in the nose. Fermented garlic. A clove the size of your thumbnail, turned nearly black, glistening with age and vinegar. He bites it like a dare and nods solemnly. "For luck," he says. "And for the bowels." You choose not to ask what he means. Later in the day, during a rest under a bridge's broken arch, you find time for one last bite. Your rice cube has hardened again. You press it gently between two rocks, softening it just enough to bite through. You chew slowly, then close your eyes. The meal is quiet. The river below hums. No one speaks. The paper from your bundle flutters in the wind. You fold it carefully and tuck it into a crevice where it will vanish with the rain. You rise shoulders heavier now, not from weight, but from the memory of what you've eaten and what it meant. You march on, behind you only footprints, ahead only silence. But in your mouth the echo of sake and rice lingers like a promise. He lost, the soldier admits, but he died extremely awake. Laughter ripples through the circle, not loud, not forced, just enough to warm the chest. Someone begins grinding more tea leaves in a small mortar. It's crude, uneven. The powder comes out coarser than matcha should, but it'll do. Good tea doesn't care if you're wearing silk or straw, he says. Just that you're paying attention. A newer recruit stares at his bowl, hesitant. Why so bitter, he asks. An older samurai replies without looking up. So you remember it. Sweetness fades. Bitterness teaches. You store that one for later. It's good, maybe even true. Another man takes a slow sip and pulls from his sash a folded paper square. Inside are roasted soybeans, crackled and glossy. He passes the pouch around. You take two, bite them in half. They're crunchy, savory, and slightly smoky from having been pan-toasted over last night's embers. It's not a meal, but it rounds the tea with something toothsome. As the tea is packed away, the coals doused the bowls, rinsed with a bit of stream water. You feel a shift, not just in yourself, but in the group. Lighter, looser, a little more human, a little less afraid. Some say that war strips away culture, that the battlefield reduces men to instinct and reaction. But you'd argue the opposite. It's here in the cold and the quiet that the tiniest rituals become the most important. A bowl of bitter tea, a half-sweet bean cake, a shared laugh between men who might not see the next sunrise. You tighten the lid on the tea tin and place it gently back into your pouch. It's dented, scratched, a hand-me-down from your uncle, but it still clicks shut with the same sound. You pat it once like a sleeping dog and rise. The march resumes. But something's different. Not in the terrain or the sky, but in your spine, your focus, your fingers. The tea lingers not in taste, but in tempo, a rhythm set by ritual. Your mouth still carries the trace of matcha's bitterness, and somehow that makes the world seem clearer, brighter, more worth returning to. The day is far from over, but for now you walk in silence, and somewhere inside you, the tea still whispers. Another has wrapped his in a scrap of nori. You exchange bites, chewing and comparing flavors. Mine's sour, someone says, like my aunt's attitude. Laughter follows, and for a moment the wind doesn't feel as sharp. Not far off, a soldier digs into his pouch and pulls out dried rice flour, mixing it with water and forming it into a lumpy porridge. He adds a pinch of salt and a tiny shriveled This, he says, is what 5 koku tastes like after taxes. You snort. It's true. By the time your rice makes it through processing, transport, storage, and your superior's sticky fingers, you're lucky to receive half your official allotment. But even that's more than most. Another soldier beside you recounts the tale of a ronin who once carried his last handful of rice on a string around his neck, refusing to eat it. Said it reminded him of his lord's betrayal. You ask what happened. He traded it for a comb, the man says, to clean his beard before committing seppuku. You all go quiet for a moment. Then someone mutters, "Could have at least eaten the rice first." Another sighs, wasteful. Further up the trail, your group halts for a short break. You sit under a tree watching a line of porters pass with heavy packs of rice. A few stray grains spill onto the trail. One by one, soldiers stoop to pick them up. Even in war, no one wastes rice. You pull out your own stash, a pouch of the toasted rice mixed with barley sesame and a bit of dried daikon. It's your emergency ration meant to last 2 days if necessary. You eat half, then seal it tight. Always save something. Hunger moves faster than reinforcements. You glance at your armor, dusty, battered, stained with ash and sweat. but your rice pouch still pristine, waterproofed, wrapped in oiled silk. It's the one thing you protect without thought. The sky begins to dim. A distant horn signals a regrouping. You stand, brush off your knees, and retie the pouch to your belt. It doesn't smell like much either, but it crunches loud in your mouth, releasing that sour, sweet flavor of old rice and dry air. It was meant to be boiled into porridge, but tonight it's a snack. A noisy, unapologetic one. To your left, a veteran pulls out a bundle tied with kudzu vine. Inside, a few sticks of dried lotus root, thin as bark but still earthy. He chews one slowly and offers you another. It's tough, a jaw workout. But once it softens, a whisper of sweetness creeps in. The root had been boiled in miso before drying, giving it that edge of umami that your taste buds crave after hours of ash and sweat. Around you, others unwrap their final rations. It's a quiet symphony, paper rustling teeth, cracking breath exhaling through noses to keep from making sound. One soldier near the back gnaws on roasted chestnut flour cakes, crumbling and dry but edible. Another dips a strip of pickled burdock root into a cloth-wrapped sachet of salt before biting. These are not feasts. You recognize it immediately: fermented soybean mash, half-dried, shaped into rough cubes. He cracks one between his teeth. It smells like something that crawled out of a swamp and asked to be worshipped. But the taste deep, salty, briny. It grips your taste buds like a fist and doesn't let go. Old family recipe, he says, wiping his fingers. Used to bury it in clay pots for a month. Now we just dry it on roof tiles. You nod and take a cube. It's stronger than miso, sharper than soy sauce. Something between a snack and a dare. Historians sometimes romanticize the samurai dinner paintings of lacquer boxes, steaming rice bowls, of soba-grilled eel under golden lamps. But this is the real version: cold starch, silent chewing, the occasional shiver, and eyes constantly scanning the trees. One soldier chews so hard you hear his jaw pop. Another picks bark from his teeth and curses under his breath. Beside you, a young recruit unwraps something that looks suspiciously luxurious: a moist rice roll scented with plum and jasmine. The smell makes you pause. He offers you a small bite. It's sticky, lightly floral, alive. You chew. It tastes like memory, like festivals in your childhood, like home. You swallow slowly, savoring it. Then you remember this isn't home. This is war. But for a moment there's warmth inside you, a tether to something unbroken. Not far ahead the column halts. Troop leaders confer. You take that as permission to eat again, or at least to finish what's in your hand. You unwrap a paper scrap and reveal a teardrop-shaped rice dumpling, flavored with pickled carrot and burdock, a rare regional recipe you've only encountered once before. The carrot bite is sharp, the burdock chewy, the rice mochi soft. You eat it tooth by tooth, grateful for texture and surprise. Next to you, someone unwraps smoked pumpkin slices, sparse, leathery, slightly sweet from caramelized sugars. A quick chew gives you energy without heaviness. It's almost elegant. Out here, elegance is scarcity. As the officers realign the squad, someone tosses you the rind of a dried persimmon, tough and faintly bitter. You chew it until it softens, then swallow. The flavor lingers, sweet and dusty. It reminds you of autumn festivals, even though autumn is far behind you. Then comes an unexpected gift, a tiny cup of warm broth, passed hand to hand, rich with miso and seaweed, maybe a sliver of dried radish. A single sip brings heat flooding through your chest. You close your eyes. The world tilts. You taste everything you haven't eaten: fresh greens, soft bread, warm rooms. Someone mumbles, "We won't get a real meal until dusk." Maybe it's true, maybe not. You can't be sure. But for now, that tiny cup holds enough warmth to steal your steps. You pack away the empty wrappers and crumbs. Tuck the final morsels into your pouch. Tie everything back neatly. It's not just respect, it's prevention. A crumb hidden draws insects. A torn cloth invites shame. Walking resumes. Sand shifts underfoot. Stones grind under armor. Each step dulls the echo of the last bite, but a trace remains in your gut, a reminder that flavor can be fleeting but memorable. You glance at the horizon. Dust rises in the distance. You can't tell if it's an enemy unit or just a storm. Either way, food is still in your pockets. Steel is in your grip, and despite it all, you chew on. The air changes again as you crest a scrubby ridge. The wind blows sharper, hotter, carrying a metallic tang that isn't blood but warnings. Ahead, the trail twists through rocky outcrops, shaded ravines and scrub oak so dense it threatens to scratch armor plates down to raw. You feel this something shifts, tense and silent. The columns tighten, brows furrow, and hunger becomes urgent, not from empty stomachs but from knowing calls could come soon. You reach into your pack and pull out a compressed barley and sweet miso bar, dense as stone and wrapped in lotus bark. Unwrapping it feels sacred. You break a piece off with your teeth. It's salty rich with fermented depth, sweetened by barley that's been cooked with honey and ginger. The ginger's warmth spreads in your chest almost immediately, not because it's spicy, but because it's alive. A reminder of movement tolerance and yesterday's warmth. A veteran soldier next to you sniffs it. That bar is sacred, he says quietly. Never share unless absolutely dying. You nod and tuck the rest away. Surveying the ridge ahead, you chew slowly. Even the act feels defiant now. Other soldiers have food too. Torn, dried grape clusters, dusty but sweet with preserved sugar. Another offers a sliver of sun-dried apricot, glossy and sticky with resinous sweetness. You take it. It glides in your mouth, a surprise, a moment's indulgence in shame. You chew the grape clusters and let the sugary juice spread warm through your throat. For the first time all day, you feel grounded, not just fueled. A scout kneels by a crevice and pulls out rice bran crackers, brittle and nutty. He dips one in a smear of fish paste, fermented and salty, offering half to you. The paste is pungent, powerful. The cracker offsets it, earthy, yielding. Together they create something like harmony in chaos. Historians still argue whether these paste and cracker combinations were invention of field ingenuity or deeply rooted in temple traditions. Some records tell of Zen kitchens wrapping paste in leaves to feed soldiers. Others suggest improvisation was more likely resourceful soldiers, mixing whatever remained into something resembling structure. Either way, it works here. Nearby, someone unwraps candied lotus root slices glazed with sugar and sprinkled with sesame seeds. They crackle underneath his teeth, the sweetness mocking the dryness of the ridge. You taste one and nearly cough. It's unexpected. Light, floating with sticky sugar. You pass it along. Each person bites cautiously like thieves sampling stolen treasure. Ahead, a long snap echoes through the corridor. Some poor bush stepped on too late. Instantly, boots shift. Fingers curl around hilts. Food is packed away. Rations vanish from sight. The sweetness disappears back into cloth. A sudden hush replaces chewing. But you carry that taste inside you. That bar's ginger, that grape's sugar, that cracker's nut. It doesn't go away just because your teeth don't find it. Food becomes memory flavor, echoing when teeth are empty. You track the ridge's angles. There ahead, the formation shifts. Officers signal, orders whispered. The line reforms. March resumes, but slower, more careful. You press a hand to your pack, feel the stiff weight of what remains, compressed rice balls, a bit of miso paste, a scrap of seaweed, and the shadow of sweetness you swallowed. A sudden breeze sweeps through. You taste spice in the air, not your soy or miso or barley. Something new, dust and herbs, distant smoke. Camp ahead, enemy a village. Maybe nothing, maybe everything. Food aside, everything tastes sharper. The column moves on. Sun slides toward afternoon. Shadows stretch. The ridge turns landscape. The wind picks up dust. You chew on the memory of that ginger-sweet bar. Its warmth isn't gone, not yet. And in this moment of stillness, inside movement, you realize food isn't just what you eat. It's what you carry forward, even when it's gone. So you chew on hunger, but also on memory. Shoulder your pack. Step quietly. March into change. You descend the ridge just as the light begins to soften, bleeding from harsh gold into a bruised orange. The trail flattens into a clearing flanked by tall grass, wild and untamed. The officers signal a halt, not an overnight camp, but long enough for cautious fire. Just enough to cook, just enough to remember how warmth tastes. You drop your pack with a soft thud, the straps leaving red lines on your shoulders. Your fingers move on instinct now. Flint, tinder, wood. You crouch low, shielding the spark from the breeze until the fire finally stirs. It's small, whisper-thin, but it lives. This is what you've been waiting for. You pull out your small rice ball wrapped in bamboo skin, cold and solid. But tonight, you're not eating it cold. You unwrap it carefully, then place it near the flame, not directly in it, just close enough to coax the starch awake. As it heats, the air around you fills with the faint scent of scorched soy sauce and leaf smoke, a perfume you'd bottle if you could. You hear sizzling beside you. A soldier is searing miso paste smeared on a flat rock. He's mixed it with sake leaves and crushed dried sardines. The scent is overwhelming, deep, savory, fermented. Your stomach growls audibly. He glances over and hands you a corner of scorched barley mochi with a smear of the paste. You bite. It's hot, sticky, slightly sweet, completely alive. Another soldier nearby roasts thin slices of burdock root over a twig spit. The root crackles and hisses, its sharp bitterness transforming into something nutty and caramelized. He slides a piece onto a sliver of wood and offers it. You chew slowly. Each bite is like chewing on Earth's history. Across the fire, someone drops a small wrapped bundle into the embers. A hiss, a puff of steam. A moment later, he retrieves it, leaf-wrapped glutinous rice filled with tiny cubes of chestnut and mushroom. The rice is sticky, the filling sweet savory. He splits it with you. It's rich, comforting, more than food. It's forgiveness. Others are boiling water in thin metal pots. Some for tea, others for soup. You spot a soldier adding dried tofu strips, pickled mustard greens, and a pinch of fermented soybean powder into his pot. You watch as the water darkens, scent thickening. He offers a spoonful. It's salty, funky, a bit sour, and deeply warming. Another man grinds roasted black sesame seeds and mixes them into warm water with barley flour and a splash of old sake. It turns into a kind of thick drink, nutty, slightly bitter, but rich in calories. You're given a sip. It coats your throat, leaves a trace of warmth in your belly. The kind of drink that says, not yet full, but not empty either. Someone breaks out a special treat. Candied ginger slices dipped in miso powder. A fusion of spice and salt that dances on your tongue. You savor your bite like it's the last one on Earth. Maybe it is. Historians sometimes call these battlefield meals functional. They weren't wrong. But functional misses the point. These moments, this fire, this warmth, this awkward silence of men chewing and surviving. These are as important as tactics, as maps, as swords. You warm your rice ball a bit longer, then finally bite in. The outside has crisped. The inside remains soft, infused with the bamboo leaf's fragrance. You chew slowly, methodically. You don't want this to end. One soldier has rehydrated dried pumpkin and daikon. He boils them until tender, adds miso, and lets the soup sit in the fire's edge. The smell makes your mouth water. He ladles out tiny sips with a gourd cup. You receive yours with both hands. The taste is slightly sweet, earthy grounding. You want more. There is no more. There never is. Another man hands out roasted soy flour dumplings on skewers, charred at the edges, slightly gritty but deeply satisfying. The kind of food you chew with closed eyes. Someone stirs a pot of black rice and wild herbs cooked over embers until the rice bursts slightly, its color turning from midnight to bruise purple. The herbs are sharp, mountain-picked bitter, almost minty. The flavor isn't friendly, but it wakes you up. You think of all the flavors you've eaten over the past weeks. Tart pickles, sour plums, earthy roots, fermented pastes, smoke-laced grains. Together they tell a story, not just of hunger but of persistence, of making do, of taking what the land offers, then learning to love it. As night falls deeper, the fire's glow reflects in armor plates. No one speaks loudly. Chewing becomes slower. The last bites are stretched. You lick your fingers, tasting ash and salt, then fold your wrappers, tie your bundle tight. The warmth in your belly hums like a second fire. It won't last, but it doesn't have to. Not every meal is about fullness. Some are about faith. You lie back, eyes open to the stars. Your body aches, but your stomach is quiet. And for tonight, that's everything. Night deepens. The fire's embers glow like smothered stars. Shadows flicker across bent heads and silent faces. Around the last warmth, the air is thick with stories, mostly unspoken, but carried in every handful of food, still being eaten. You feel something shift inside you, maybe purpose, maybe resolve. Definitely hunger, but quieter now, focused. Other soldiers surround the dying flame, coaxing maggots of smoke into small pots. They're brewing miso soup, simple, honest. You smell the rich saltiness before you see it simmering broth, loaded with rehydrated daikon chunks of dried tofu, floating seaweed bits. There's no rice left, just the soup. You accept a wooden ladle. Warmth floods into your belly, trickles up your chest. You close your eyes. There's comfort here. Beside you, someone unwraps steamed barley dumplings wrapped in paper and steamed long ago. Now they're dry and dusty, but boiled in the soup, they soften into chewy morsels. Flecks of barley and herb hidden within. You eat two, then pass the ladle back. No one says a word. It doesn't need saying. A soldier near the fire offers you a small bowl of pickled turnip strips, marinated in rice, bran, and vinegar, then dried until crisp. They crackle against your teeth like brittle paper. Sour, tangy mouth cleansing. You eat a few, alternating with sips of the soup. The flavors dance together: salt, sour, smoke water. Someone offers slices of konnyaku jelly marinated in miso, slimy, earthy, slightly sweet. You chew one thoughtfully. Its texture is unnerving, but it works. Salted jelly that fills without weight. A miracle of field cooking. Historians still argue whether dishes like these, konnyaku turnip barley, were standard armory fare or priest-class improvisations during long sieges. Some chronicles say temple-run armies taught these recipes to war bands. Others claim they're the result of peasant cunning and improvisation. Either way, you're eating them now, and that's the only proof you need. The wind outside hums cold. The fire offers the only heat. You feel your food settling into your body, first warmth, then silence, then sleep. One soldier marks the little pieces of stock that remain: a bit of seaweed, a scrap of tofu, a pinch of barley. Carefully tucks them back into a pouch, as if saving them for dreams. Maybe they'll be breakfast, maybe not. Nearby, another soldier pulls out the last edible item in camp: compressed black sesame seed cake, nutty, oily, sweet. He breaks it into 5 crumbs and divides it among the men. You receive yours silently and chew slowly. The oil coats your tongue. The flavor lingers. The sweetness reminds you of nothing other than home. You think of the first meal you had on this March cold barley sour umeboshi stale rice. And now here you sit full of soup and crumbs warm despite the night. You realize the bigger meal wasn't tonight's soup. It was the bowl shared, the ladle passed, the ember coaxed and cherished. You take your final sip of miso broth. The flavor clings to your teeth. You wipe your mouth on your sleeve. No water left to rinse. You fold your bowl up with its sticks. You lay your wrappers flat and bury them in the ashes. No trace, no waste, just embers and memory. You lie back. Sleep stretches like relief. You breathe by the embers, now listening. Tomorrow brings movement again, food again, perhaps nothingness, perhaps fortune. But right now, with the fire dying and the soup gone, you feel whole. You close your eyes. Dawn barely stirs the sky when your legs twitch awake. Crickets are still singing in the dew, unseen but persistent. The camp is silent, no fire, no bustle, just breath exhaled into the chill. You sit in semi-darkness, the ghost of soup and rice still humming in your belly, while your stomach murmurs for the next ration. There are 2 pieces left in your pouch, a shard of compressed rice mixed with seaweed powder and half of a brittle square of Chan-roasted barley cake. Both are dry. Both are carried for emergencies. In the soft morning gloom, they taste like survival. You take a corner of the rice block, softening it with your breath until it yields. The seaweed shimmers in the grain pinpricks of green and black that smell faintly of ocean. You chew slowly, letting the salt mingle with dry starch. It sticks in your mouth, drying your cheeks, but also thickening your resolve. The barley cake is next burnt at the edges, speckled with black sesame. You break it in half and breathe in the aroma of char and grain. The flavor is rich, smoky, and nutty. You eat it deliberately, but don't try to finish it. It's not meant to be rushed. It's meant to remind you of home kitchens and harvested grains, but also of discipline and patience. Nearby, a soldier kneels and crushes the remains of fresh wild onions from the evening before to sprinkle on his ration. He mimics making tea, pinch of leaf, splash of water, until the mixture turns into a bitter, garlicky slurry. He drinks it. He tells you it steadies his nerves and clears sinus fog. You take a sip. It tastes like sky and sweat. You smile. Historians still argue whether using fresh herbs like this was practical or superstition. Some say it drastically raised vitamin intake. Others say it just tasted awful. Either way, it's part of your morning ritual now. You scan your comrades. Some unwrap foraged fern root mush from yesterday's walk, rehydrated with stream water so it becomes chewy paste. Others break apart roasted millet crumbs mixed with powdered dried fish. They chew them to get protein and grit. You think dry hardness might be the most honest texture of war food. A veteran offers you a tiny dip of fermented plum paste, so thick it clings to your finger. You smear it on your rice shard. The acidity cuts through the dryness, revitalizing the grain. You taste home orchard comfort in a single smear. No fire yet. All water is cold. All meals bare bones. Yet in chewing, you feel more than fuel. You feel purpose. You feel acknowledgement that this moment chewing quietly before battle matters. You rub your hands together, trying to warm them. You feel the rice edge and barley crumb in your fingers, tactile memory. Even when the food is gone, the hands remember. Someone passes you the last sip of chilled barley tea kept from the previous day. It's cold, but faintly sweet. The flavor lingers low in your throat. You tilt your head back and let it run down. It tastes like dust, but also like 10,000 mornings in training fields. You take your final barley bite and pocket the crumbs just in case. Hunger moves faster than relief. Or maybe you keep them because memories do. As you stand, your legs quiver. Your armor feels heavy. The world smells of mist and soil and readiness. Your stomach is silent, but your heart is loud. And in that quiet gut and beating chest, you feel alive. Because every bite, however small, was a pact that you endure, that you move, that you exist. You tighten belt, shoulder pack, adjust kabuto straps. And with that, you step out into whatever awaits. Not fed, not full, but alive. As morning light washes over you like cold water, the squad climbs out of the thinning mist and into a high plain dotted with reeds. The terrain changes, open, exposed, wind-whipped. Your stomach, dulled by the small rations of dawn, begins to grumble again, not from hunger, but from routine. Your body expects fuel, now. You reach into your sash and extract the last of your sticky rice cake, wrapped in fern leaves and scented faintly with pine resin. It's dense, a little springy under your teeth, and comforting despite being cold. The flavor is simple rice resin, a whisper of forest. You chew deliberately, letting each bite warm your belly just slightly. Nothing ferments, nothing rots, just resilience pressed into starch. Nearby, someone unwraps smoked fish jerky, thin strips, held together by long, cold smoke lines and fiber-like muscle. It's brittle and smoky, rich in oil and grit, but the color of dried wood. You chew slowly, letting the chew of fish meet the grain of rice cake. Protein and carbs in union. It's not tasty, but it powers. A veteran offers you a sip from his small flask Sakalis, steeped in barley tea, creamy at first, then grainy, almost sweet. You take a cautious mouthful. It coats your throat like balm. The warmth of sugar and ferment seeps inward. It doesn't replace a meal, but it steadies your spirit. A younger recruit attempts to grind a few flakes of pickled fern root into powder, whispering, "It's a meditation." The older soldier beside him picks up the crushed bits, sniffs it, and flicks it into his palm. You watch as he tentatively chews it, then smacks his lips. "Bitter like regret," he says, but then returns to chewing. Perhaps that's the point. No bread, no fresh greens, just bits of forest, bits of field, compressed and carried like prayers. You take the final portion of your rice cake and break it in half. One half stays in your pouch emergency ration, nothing else. The other half dissolves under your teeth until it's just grain and spit. You swallow. Someone plucks a handful of dried mountain herbs, green-brown and brittle. They chew them as a palate cleanser between mouthfuls of fish and rice, leaves and bitterness. Helps digestion or superstition. Either way, you do the same. As you walk across the plain, the wind is strong enough to scatter your breath. You taste the clouds in your mouth. But beneath that high bite in the air, the texture of the food you've eaten stays sticky rice, salty jerky, sour brew. Food you didn't choose. Food that shaped you. You watch the formation tighten as scouts signal ahead. There's talk, quick hushed, of enemy scouts, the kind who strike before midday. No time for rest, no time for fire. Leave no trace. March on. You fold your cloth and tie it tight. You tuck crumbs into a pouch and press it close to your chest. The food inside is gone, but the promise of stored energy remains. Because once you chew something, it changes you. You close your eyes briefly, feel heat where food once was, then open them. Step forward. Your path leads upward again, toward ridges, toward confrontation, toward uncertainty. But your body pulses with fuel rice fish fermentation, not fullness, not indulgence, just survival. And with each footfall, the echo isn't only armor on rock, it's the promise you will eat again, you will march again, you will endure, because you carry food inside you, even if you no longer carry it out. The trail cuts sharp through a dense cedar forest, now narrow, root-tangled quiet in the way only old woods can be. Your steps land softer here, muffled by layers of fallen needles and damp earth. Even the birds seem to speak more carefully in this place. Every sound you make feels borrowed, every breath half-owned. You're chewing again, this time on a modest portion of steamed barley and miso paste wrapped in wild grass leaves. It's coarse, a little sour, but deeply familiar. The barley resists your bite at first, then breaks into soft grain. The miso, aged dark, heavy with salt, melts slowly and coats your tongue with its earthy weight. You chew with patience, letting it nourish not just your gut, but your memory. Another soldier passes by with a small tin of dried yam cakes, each one shaped like a petal, browned at the edges. He offers you one. You nod, bite in. The texture surprises you. Chewy, dense, subtly sweet, with an aftertaste of soil and smoke. This yam was likely roasted before being pounded into shape. It's not meant to please, it's meant to last. Someone crouched by a fallen log unpacks what might be the most luxurious ration you've seen all week. Simmered adzuki beans and roasted millet, rolled into small balls, dusted with powdered kelp. The sweetness is delicate, just a whisper, but enough to coax out a smile. You exchange a look, brief but grateful. Food tastes different in the woods. Maybe it's the pine scent. Maybe it's the stillness. Maybe it's that here your mind is quiet enough to notice every detail: the crunch of roasted grain, the tang of fermented paste, the subtle musk of rice flour that has absorbed the scent of your pack. You remember something, a fragment from earlier days, a mentor saying, "When you eat slowly, you taste not only food, but the days it took to grow." At the time, you thought he was being poetic. Now, with your jaw moving in slow meditation over barley and kelp, you wonder if he meant it literally. Historians still debate whether samurai foraging was tactical necessity or cultural preference. Some argue that surviving off root and stream wasn't just about logistics, it was philosophy, a reminder that even warriors must bow to the land. You're starting to believe it. Ahead, a soldier squats near a spring, rehydrating dried miso-soaked tofu slices in a small tin. He lets you taste a piece. It's spongy, deeply savory, with a mineral tang that reminds you of river stones and rusted armor. You drink a sip of spring water after it balances the salt like poetry. Another man unwraps his lunch, sweet potato starch dumplings rolled in crushed soybeans. The dumplings are gummy yielding, but the soybean adds grit. He gives you one with a wink. "Good for the teeth," he says. You chew carefully. He's not wrong. For dessert, if it can be called that, a young recruit tears a piece of dried apple soaked in plum vinegar. It's leathery, translucent, sharp. It cuts through the salt still clinging to your tongue. You feel your mouth wake up. Briefly, you feel young again. You sit on a fallen log, staring through cedar trunks at a sliver of sky. The others are chewing, stretching, checking gear. Nobody talks much, but you all move in the same rhythm. The rhythm of having eaten, of holding something inside, however small. A soldier starts to hum an old marching song, low and slow. Not enough to attract attention, just enough to remind you you're still human. The tune lingers between trees like smoke. You finish your last bite of miso barley, then wipe your hands on a scrap of cloth. There are crumbs in your lap. You brush them onto the forest floor. A gift, maybe, to whatever gods eat leftovers. One man grinds a pinch of black tea leaves, and roasted brown rice, pours boiling water over them, and lets them steep. You sip from a shared tin. The drink is bitter, grainy, slightly floral. It doesn't taste like home, but it doesn't taste like war either. It lives in the quiet space between. As the signal to move comes, you rise slowly, hands warm from the tin. Your breath fogs lightly in the forest shade. You feel light. Not from fullness, from function, from having what you need, no more. You strap your pack, adjust your blade, step forward, And as your boots press into pine needles, the taste of roasted grain and old tea lingers on your tongue, tethering you gently to this moment in the trees. The forest clears, and the trail opens into a fertile river valley that smells faintly of silt and willows. The wind has shifted cool now, carrying moisture from upstream. Your pack feels lighter now, partly because food has diminished and partly because your body has adapted. Hunger is no longer an alarm. It hums faintly beneath your ribs. You reach inside your pouch and pull out what remains a small triangular rice and barley cake wrapped in hemp paper. The rice is firm. The barley fractures under pressure. You bite into it with careful appreciation, the texture gritty and real. Inside, specks of pickled mustard seed crack under your teeth, releasing a burst of sharpness, vinegar, salt, and centuries-old fermentation. You chew slowly, letting the pickles calm the bland grain, then chew some more. This is breakfast. This is broken food, noble in its simplicity. Not far off, a comrade peels back the cloth wrapping from another triangular cake, revealing a similar composition, but with sweet brown sugar glinting across the surface. He offers you a small bite. It's sweet enough to surprise you, sticky enough to slow you down. You accept it's not indulgence, it's survival. Another soldier unwraps fermented yam strips, twisted and dried until they resemble rope. He bites one off and hands a segment to you. The yam's interior is soft, fibrous, just sweet enough to balance the tang of your rice cake. It dissolves slowly on the tongue, but lingers like a memory, or regret, or the taste of something still possible. Historians still debate whether these sugar-tinged rations were standard or reserved for special campaigns. Some suggest lords deliberately withheld them to maintain discipline. Others cite diaries that mention rare gifts of sweet rice and sugar pastries on particularly dire marches. Either way, you taste that sugar now, and it's a brightness amid dust and routine. By the riverside, someone kneels by a pot of warm water and rehydrates konnyaku noodles, then adds shredded dried kelp and rice brands. They toss in a dash of fermented garlic mash for boldness. They skim off a handful for you. The noodles are slippery, briny, slightly slimy, but hold firm in your mouth. Each swallow feels like reclamation of motion teeth. Tongue spit the mechanics of survival. A younger recruit offers you something unusual today, a tiny glass jar of honeyed sepia sugar leftovers from a village stop. He hasn't eaten yet, but he holds the jar like treasure. He unscrews it and gives you just a droplet on your fingertip. You taste it smoky, deep, unfamiliar, but alive. You swallow. The sweetness travels across your tongue and settles in your chest like a silent blessing. You close your eyes, and for a heartbeat, the world tastes less like war. Another soldier picks bitter weeds from the water's edge, watercress, and tender nettle shoots, and crushes them between leaves. He hands you a bit. It's sharp and herbal and cold. A shock. You chew and feel your lungs open. You breathe deeply, tasting green. Body resets. You're reminded how food isn't just for the belly, but for the bones, the breath, even the spirit. Some foods feed memory, others jolt awareness. You stand and scan the river horizon. Ripples dance across the surface. Your comrade ties the last of his meals, the rice cake wrapper, into his sash. You tuck your crumbs into your pouch, careful not to let them escape. There's still miles ahead. One soldier kneels at the waterline, sipping damp soil and herbs to stave off thirst. You laugh at the image, but understand. Food and water intertwine here. Even a soup of leaf and crumb feels vital. You fold your cloth rations and pass your empty flask to a younger man. You offer a pinch of sugar to his skittish eyes. He nods, unsure, then tastes. His eyes widen. Wordless gratitude passes between you. Someone launches into a quiet story about a daimyo whose warriors carried salt rather than money on certain pilgrimage missions. They salted both meat and resolve. That memory, now centuries old, sticks in your mind as you chew the pickled mustard seed pieces. You rise, boots press into moist soil. You shoulder your pack. The sun has shifted gravity, pressing light in golden angles across the valley. You feel resilient, grounded, aware, because in the space between bites, the body remembers not only food, but survival. You march forward, leaving the river behind, but you carry its tastes, grain, sugar, salt, herb inside you. And in the twilight surge of your breath, a fullness lingers, not belly deep, but memory deep. That's living. At the edge of the valley, a low ridge lines the horizon like a silent sentinel. Ahead lies your next challenge, unpredictability. Enemy paths, rocky inclines, or perhaps a village that offers not feast but suspicion. For now, you chew on the reality of your supplies and what remains of your patience. You open the last paper-wrapped bar of fermented soybean and rice bran that someone passed around earlier. It's dark brown, almost black, and smells like earth and age. You break it with your teeth, crunching through brittle rice and almond-shaped soybean bits. Inside is dense paste, fermented hard with salty tang and golden sweetness from rice lees. You chew slowly. The bar dissolves in layers, first sugar and soy, then grain, then grit. Each bite is bracing. Each chew insists you stay present. Nearby, another soldier unwraps a small leaf-wrapped bundle. Inside, tiny morsels of dried chestnut and black sesame rolled into balls with honey and sagewort. He offers you one. You chew it with measured attention. The flavors unfold: nutty chestnut, syrupy sweetness, herbal bitterness. For a moment, you taste something that isn't survival, it's delight. There's a debate in the group now whether to forage ahead or push on and wait for supply lines. Some believe the ridge conceals mushrooms or roots that could stretch the rations. Others warn of scouts. You sit between opinions, holding fragments of flavor in your mouth as you listen. The food in your pouch may be gone, but your hunger is still negotiable. Someone rummages in their pack and presents the final sachet of powdered pickled plum, a pinch meant for emergencies. You taste it, tart, acidic, alive. It puckers your cheeks and raises your eyes. Then you swallow. It's a memory, crystal sharp, bright, instantly gone. Historians often dispute whether salted plums were standard issue or luxury desperation. Some say daimyo gifted them to retain loyalty. Others insist they were last resorts, rationing moral fiber along with food. Now, chewing this crumble-alone piece, you wonder if either version matters. It sharpened the morning. A soldier cuts thin slivers from a dried lotus root that he stashed beneath his armor. He offers a cross-section slice, crunchy, bitter, fibrous, but still edible. Vegetal, ancient, resilient. You chew, tasting cold root and field life. It holds. You walk, stepping from grass to scree root, to shale ridge, to open air. With each step, your muscles hum from remembered fuel. Teeth that swallowed seeds, roots, soups. They recognize this walk. This is meaning. A silence grows in the group, not tense, reflective. Each person processing the dwindling rations the next few miles, the possibility of fruit or failure. Food becomes narrative. You chew rice, you chew roots, and now you chew fear quietly in understanding. One soldier squats and crushes up a few dried nettle shoots into water, brewing it as tea. It's bitter, sharp enough to clear the sinuses and keep the joints steady. You drink a sip. The bitterness isn't pleasant, but it wakes your legs. You reach the crest. Ahead, the ridge falls away into a hollow. Below lies a hut and a crumbling garden. No smoke rises, but the possibility of something fresh, wild greenswater, maybe even a woman stirring a stew where no army should tread, fills the air like tension. Now the group splits. A few slip toward the hut. Others stay on alert. You carry nothing now but memories of flavor soy and rice plum and herbal smoke, and resolve born on hunger and held by community. You bite again at the soybean bar. It's almost gone. You crunch the last fragments. You swallow. You stand dusting crumbs from your palm. You stretch legs tight from tread. You breathe breeze across the ridge, clean, sharp, uncertain. And then with the same pace you walked before you step into whatever comes next. Hunger in your belly, memory in your heart, and footsteps soft chewing on the last of what you carried toward the unknown. You descend the ridge into a fog-shrouded hollow, where the ruined hut stands a place of stillness, thick with possibility. The grass is damp, the moss is saturated. The air tastes faintly of cold spring and old wood. Your stomach hollow and insistent, echoes with the absence of food, but your mouth still holds the memory of every morsel you've eaten across these miles. You kneel beside the crumbling foundation as a few soldiers slip inside, rummaging through broken jars and leaf bundles. They emerge with fresh sprigs of fuki stem wild onions and bright sancho leaf. Others retrieve small clumps of wild berried plum ume from a sticky vine. It isn't civilization, but it's something, maybe enough. Though you no longer possess rich rations, you gather what they return. Herbs, wild roots, a handful of or two, and leaves wrapped in damp paper. You sort them carefully in your pouch. This last harvest feels sacred. Nearby, a soldier crushes wild fuki with salt from his pouch, making a coarse paste he spreads onto scraps of barley cake. You watch him chew it thoughtfully. It's sharp, bright, aromatic, scattered with grit, but in that bite there's revival. Another soldier bites into a tiny It bursts against his tongue with sour, salty juice. He exhales, eyes wide. That's life he breathes. He offers you a half. You taste it. It rattles your chest like acid lightning, then settles as heat. You swallow. You steady yourself on a moss-covered stone trunk, steadying knees worn thin from travel. You chew slowly on that lemon plum bitter burst and feel your veins pulse. Starvation is not just hunger, it's absence. This plum is definition. Across the way, another man sets a small stone slab over smoldering coals gathered from hearth walls once more. He roasts slices of dried burdock root and wild ginger. The scent curls through the hollow, earthy, spicy primal. He hands you a slice. You chew slowly. Bitterness mellows. Warmth roots in your chest. The group shares tea made from crushed sancho leaf and barley husk is passed. It's herbaceous and bitter with charcoal notes. It doesn't taste like tea, it tastes like resistance to collapse. You drink it. It washes your throat clean. Historians still argue whether these post-battle scavengement rituals were strategic or instinctive. Some journals speak of orders to forage immediately. Others suggest it was spiritual, a reclaiming of life from ruin. Either way, you're living it now. You wrap up small bundles, a few plum halves, a slice of roasted root, a leafy sprig for flavor later. You tie them with vine. Pockets no longer hold emergency rations. They hold intention remnants of the day, proof you gathered, proof you survived. The squad heels close. They share a final crack of whispered laughter about vermin in rice, absurd snacks, hot tea in cold dawn. It echoes softly across the ruin. You stand, stretching through bones that ache, breath steady, hunger not gone. But hope now tastes like plum and smoke and soil. Resilience. You shoulder your pack again, a little heavier now with foraged green. You step onto the muddy path, patches of grass, shining footprints fading. Your teeth still hold tart seeds. Your belly still hums with emptiness. But your heart, it pulses. Because survival sometimes begins after all food is gone and rising again. You walk out of the swamp hollow with the sun dipping low sky, now painted with ash and rose. Your pack is nearly empty, your body aches. Hunger is still your shadow, but there's something different. Now resolve is stronger than emptiness, memory steadier than fatigue. You carry nothing but etched paths, and the scent of smoke lingering under your fingernails. Ahead lies what comes next. Maybe safety, maybe battle. You don't know. What you do know is that with every step, your stride is armed with the echo of every meal, barley and rice fish and fermented leaf tea and pickled plum. The flavor isn't fullness, but it's alive. You trudge through the slowing dusk, each footfall soft against the reddening grass. The sky drifts into deep purple and the wind slows, settled now with evening quiet. Your muscles soften not with rest, but with passage. The memory of food remains a plum's sharp brightness. On the tongue, a sip of dark tea, warming your chest, a grainy bar dissolving in your mouth like heritage. Each bite became promise that you could walk further, that you could endure, that you could belong even in famine's shadow. Tonight, the rations have vanished, but in their place thrives an internal fullness, not of belly but of continuity. Meals shared beside hidden fires, quiet teas brewed beside guard posts, foraged roots picked from silent woods. They fade. Yes, but they leave their imprint, warmth in the body, clarity in the mind, peace in the awareness that you carried something true inside, even when the world was stripped away. You walk on in twilight, aware of the pulse of survival pressing through your veins, not because your mouth is stuffed, but because your spirit is tethered to what you ate and what you chose to carry onward. Hunger has softened into acceptance. Tomorrow may bring more meals. Or not. But tonight, under the first stars, you rest in something rarer than nourishment, belonging. You are part of something enduring, a long route not yet over but walked with strength born of rice and resolve. Sleep now in the memory of meals gone by. Dream of resilience born in sour plum grain and flame. End of script, sweet dreams.